Kaitlyn McGrath covers the Blue Jays for the Athletics. She does so, has for a while, and she joins us today from the Big Smoke. How you doing, Kaitlyn? Welcome to the RP Show.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Transparency is what we do here. I've been knee-deep in NFL, NHL, and some CFL coverage. I saw the Joey Votto story with him joining the Blue Jays, and while I know it's large, I'm not sure I know how large it is. And I know that you would know this better than anybody. What does it mean? How did it come about? And what are the expectations of a Toronto favorite son joining the Jays?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like there was definitely some mutual interest. It sounds like Joey Votto especially was interested in joining the Blue Jays. Obviously, I think he's talked a lot about wanting to play for one team his whole career with the Reds, obviously, but that wasn't going to happen. The reality was the Reds were moving on. They've got a young team. They kind of want to move on to the next phase of that franchise for them. And so Votto was looking for a job, and he's in the latter stages of his career, obviously a great career, a Hall of Fame career, but he still felt like he had some in the tank. And when you reach that point of a major leaguer's career, oftentimes they are looking for just an opportunity. The Blue Jays were willing to give him one as a minor league contract, so he'll sign kind of the split contract where if he does make the team or eventually has made the team, he'll be a major leaguer, but obviously he has the option of going down and starting the season in the minors. Is it a big deal? I mean, I think for the fan reaction, I would say yes. This has been a strange offseason for the Blue Jays, sort of been, I don't know how you want to describe it, uninspiring, lackluster, all these different words. It's not been an offseason that has kind of generated fan interest the way they have in years past. And I would say this Joey Votto thing has been the one thing that I've noticed has really made fans happy. And so, I think if you're the Blue Jays, obviously Votto has to earn his place on the team. At the same time, they knowingly signed a Canadian baseball icon. So it would be hard to not give him that opportunity. I think everybody will be excited to see him just in Blue Jays uniform and Blue Jays colors. So I think it remains to be seen, but it does feel like Votto is coming in with a pretty fresh perspective of like, hey, I just want to earn an opportunity here. I want to be part of this club and I want to help you guys.
Well, I appreciate the insight. And, we went over and watched the Jays at Boston a week ago, versus Boston and Fort Myers a week ago Sunday. They lost 3-1. Alejandro Kirk homered, and there was absolutely zero talk of this. It wasn't even on the radar around there. Like, how did this all start with Joey Votto? Where did the rumblings start? How did we get to where we are?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those weird things because I think, like, thinking about the match between the player and the club, it made a lot of sense. The Blue Jays do kind of need some power off the bench. They were in seek of probably some veteran experience. Someone like Votto has played a long time, has seen a lot in the game, and is kind of well known to be a great leader, someone that has a good reputation for helping young players like he did with the Reds. And so the match on paper seemed really good. And then obviously all the other sort of things that you put into it, Canadian, potential Hall of Famer, all these kinds of things. It seemed like a really good match. And you're sort of wondering, like, why didn't this happen a few months ago? It's hard to say. I personally have not been able to talk to Votto myself, but just kind of reading what's been out there, it just sounds like Votto is seeing what was out there, seeing what opportunities, but finally just kind of wanted to get it done with the Jays, and they were willing to give him that opportunity. So on the one hand, it did kind of come out of nowhere because you start to get to a point where you're midway through spring and you think like this is the team that they have. But at the same time, it does feel like both sides are pretty motivated to make this happen. And obviously it did. So we kind of just have to wait and see where it goes from here. But I think probably we'll see Votto in spring training games soon. I think he's playing in a minor league game today and then potentially going to be in some major league games soon.
Okay, so you asked all the same questions I did. I'm not crazy then. Thank you for explaining that. And you explained it far better than anybody else has as to how this all came about. But I also got to ask you this. I look at the power rankings. The Blue Jays are predicted to be 10th overall in the majors. But there is that pessimism. I've heard it. I've seen it with the fan base. Any chance this team could surprise that they're an under-the-radar team coming into 2024? Or have the fans pegged it that they just lost too much in the offseason?
No, I mean, for sure they could be sort of under the radar, seen as a dark horse. It's a different sort of feeling around this team. I think for the last few years being around them, they've sort of been a very obvious and honestly popular World Series pick. A lot of years where they were seen as, one of the favorites to go to the World Series. That's not the case this year. This is, the first year that in a while where they are, not being talked about as much, not seen as a favorite. I think the players feel that too. There's doubts going into this season, the way there hasn't been, basically since kind of this era of the Blue Jays started. So there is a different feel around the team. I think that it really kind of depends on how the offense looks. That was the real issue last year. I mean, the pitching was really, really good. They've brought back most of the same pitchers. Now, of course, we don't know if the pitching will be the exact same as it was last year. Already there's sort of been some question marks. Manoah has been a bit sidelined this spring. Gausman as well, slow start to the spring. So you're already wondering, well, are we already seeing some signs that the rotation is not going to be as strong? Maybe, but it is all the same guys. So you sort of hope that they could continue their track record. Obviously, Manoah still has to rebound from last year. The bullpen looks really good though too. And so I think it really just comes down to the offense. Can guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. be a lot better, be more at their peak potential than they were last year? Alejandro Kirk, can he have a bounce back year after a year last year where, he was slowed in spring training from the birth of his first child? Dalton Varsho, can he be a more productive player at the plate? Is he more adjusted to the new league after that big blockbuster trade last year? So you can go up and down the lineup and say, can these guys have better years? And I think that if they can, that will make the offense a lot better. George Springer, another name where he had a weird year last year. And then there's some new guys. Can Justin Turner, add an element to this lineup that they really need? Can his patience and his approach, add what they need at the top of their lineup? How is IKF going to contribute? So yes, they've lost some guys. Matt Chapman is no longer on the team. But I think that, to me, if their offense, hits like they're capable of and can score runs at a higher clip than they were able to last year, I do think that they can be a contending team. A lot has to go right on the pitching side too, but they've got the pieces there. But I think that it's a team that has to perform much closer to their ceiling and not their floor like they did last year.
Well, for somebody like you that covers the Blue Jays for The Athletic, what you're explaining to me is they're rife with storylines entering the regular season. That's a great thing, right? They're a very curious team to follow here right now. And I think the last thing I would ask you is, we were left wanting a little going to watch the spring training game in Fort Myers against the Red Sox, because the only regulars in the lineup were Davis Snyder, Santiago Espinal, and Alejandro Kirk. We didn't see the kids. Kevin, Bo, or Vladdy. How many jobs are legitimately open? How many jobs are legit open in spring training right now, approaching the regular season opener?
Yeah, not really many. This team is pretty settled. There's probably a job or two up for grabs in the bullpen, just depending on how the rotation shakes out. So if you're talking about a rotation that does not include, at least to begin the season, Gausman and Manoah, because they need a bit more time to ramp up or recover from whatever injuries they're dealing with right now, then, you slide someone like Bowden Francis and Mitch White into the rotation potentially, and then you're looking for a couple spots in the bullpen. And then in terms of the lineup, it's probably just a couple of those bench spots realistically. Like I mentioned, that competition for a left-handed hitter off the bench. Votto is obviously in that competition. You have Vogelback, Spencer Horwitz. There's a lot of guys vying for kind of that utility role. Ernie Clement, who's having an excellent spring. You mentioned Davis Schneider, Espinal, Biggio. So there's probably two-ish spots for utility guys on the roster, but there's obviously more guys than spots available. So you're not necessarily looking like who's going to be the starting center fielder or outfielders. Like we kind of know who those guys are. So it's more the complementary roles that we're talking about competing. But, there's still some intrigue for the last couple of weeks of spring training before we get to the regular season.
A wonderful Jays update. I'll let you get back to the game. Kaitlyn, looking forward to watching the season, following it through your stuff. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kaitlyn McGrath from The Athletic.